right, we're getting to the business end of women's college basketball season. The first step is winning your conference and finishing that out. We're going to hit on multiple topics, which includes Hannah Hidalgo gets pantsed by Florida State. Texas got home. Then we're going to preview Super Sunday, which includes has South Carolina gotten their groove back? We'll find out when they play Kentucky. As well, Duke and Florida State. Will this be the flat tire game as both teams are coming off big victories? And then finally, TCU versus Baylor. They are playing for all the marbles in the Big 12. And then finally, Geno Auriemma goes off on Paige Beckers. But as always, before we start, if you enjoy the content, then please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. In my last video, I suggested the ACC was done as I saw no way that Notre Dame was going to go down at home to Florida State and then Louisville. I thought that it was a certainty after losing to NC State that they would bounce back in a big way. Of course, it was senior night, a big night. You thought Notre Dame would crush, and they lay an egg. It was multiple issues for Notre Dame. First of all, nobody could handle Michaela Timpson as she was getting whatever she wanted on the inside. To complicate matters for Notre Dame, Maddie Westbelt picked up her fourth foul early in the third quarter. But to be fair, Timpson was having her way with her. The other issue for Notre Dame was they were just missing a lot of easy looks at the basket, like right at the rim, that just wouldn't go down. It was one of those nights which was made much worse by Hannah Hidalgo going 4 for 18, and she just couldn't do anything. And what was interesting, it appeared Tanaya Latston was going to have the same sort of game as she could not get it going in the first half. But then the fourth quarter came and she could not be stopped as she just took turns taking Hidalgo, Citron, and Prosper to the basket whenever she wanted, it felt like. After the game, Niele Ivey apologized to Notre Dame fans, and of course what coaches do, if they have a bad loss at home, they complain about their defense. But if you take a look at their team 4 factors, which I love looking at, I think it gives you a quick indication of where teams are at. Their net rating in ACC conference play was plus 29, but in the last 5 games, it has been plus 18. And the big area of difference, which is striking, is on offensive rating. So overall in conference play, they were scoring 112 points per 100 possessions. And in the last 5 games, 104 points per 100 possessions. That's the difference. If you look at defensive rating was, they were giving up 82.4 points per 100 possessions. Last 5 games, 86 points per 100 possessions. 4-point difference, but more striking as offense where it's an 8-point difference. As well, in their last 2 games, they've played 2 good teams with good offenses, that being NC State and Florida State. But where those teams struggle tends to be on their defense of end, and Notre Dame just really didn't take advantage of that. And the question is why? Well, the main culprit, there are really 2 that you can see in the last 5 games. They've fallen off. If you look at the on-off percentages, in conference play this season, Hannah Hidalgo is minus 5.2. Her on-off, Carlin, is minus 1.1. But in the last 10 games, Hidalgo's plus minus has gone to minus 25.6. Carlin minus 4. In the last 5 games, Carlin has gone to minus 15.9 and Hannah Hidalgo is minus 33. And with Hidalgo, when you look at her individual stats, it's pretty clear where she's struggling. It's with her shot. So her field goal percentage from 2-point range has gone from 47% in conference play to 33% in the last 5 games. Her 3-point shooting percentage has gone from 33% to 20%. Her effective field goal shooting percentage has gone from 48% to 32%. Liza Carlin is having issues with her shooting as well, as her effective field goal shooting percentage has gone from 52.8% over conference play to now 39.3%. And her field goal percentage is down as well from 47% to now 35%. And Ivy said the right thing in the press conference. She's like, you just got to tell Hidalgo, keep on shooting. You'll snap out of it. She's that type of player.
Yeah, just trying to get her to the next play. Watching film after games, in the games, trying to get her to the next play. She's a high-level scorer. So sometimes with those type of scores, they kind of shoot their way back in the game, but they just weren't falling to her tonight.
But if she does continue to struggle, I wouldn't be surprised to see more of a lineup of Miles, Citron, Prosper, King, and Westbelt, or Miles, Citron, Prosper, King, and Caval, as those lineups with limited minutes have had some success during conference play this season. And overall, this will be a lot of a narrative thing. If Notre Dame gets on track and wins the next one versus Louisville, shares a conference title, and then wins the ACC tournament, then they're back on track, especially if they have a good tournament and make it to the Final Four. If they don't and they wash out early, then you say, hey, they washed out at the end of the year. I tend to go with Dawn Staley, who said in her pre-press conference prior to Ole Miss, end of the year, you just want to get any win. That's the objective.
Yeah, just win. At this stage of the game, it's just about winning. Ugly wins count just as much as pretty ones.
And speaking of South Carolina, they got a nice gritty win over Ole Miss at Ole Miss. If you were a South Carolina fan, it is good to see Fagan and Kitts both have good games, as Kitts went for 16 points on 6 of 10 shooting, but more importantly as well, Fagan went for 22 points on 10 of 13 shooting. Tahina Powell and Fulwiley, they struggled a bit. Powell going 1 for 9 for 5 points. Fulwiley 3 of 10 for 9 points. The other one who you would think is due to break out is Tessa Johnson. So in this game, she only went for 2 points on 1 of 5 shooting. I continue to say I just don't like her off the dribble. Like, she's really a spot-up shooter, and when she dribbles and takes it to the basket, more often than not, I find that she struggles. South Carolina fan, you can come at me and tell me how wrong I am. And despite all of that, I do think the committee got it wrong in dropping South Carolina to a 2 seed with the non-conference schedule they played and how many quad 1 games they have had. They've put up the resume. They are a 1 seed. But as I've said before, I really don't care, as each region's going to have 2 really good teams in it, so I really don't think it matters. But I know a lot of fans they're not respecting us. The media doesn't respect us. And I'm like, who cares? If you're top 16, you get those first 2 games at home, and then you have a chance to prove your wares and show everybody else how good you are. Now, as far as the SEC title is concerned, so Texas got it done at Mississippi State. It was a tough, gritty win. They just bulldozed people inside and did what they had to do. Texas is looking very good to get a share of the SEC title, as they have Florida at home, but anything can happen. As well, Kentucky goes to South Carolina. On paper as well, you would expect South Carolina to win that game, but it is an interesting matchup as Kentucky has size, and I want to see how Fagan does against that size. A team that did not do very well against it was Tennessee. Must-watch viewing is when Tennessee loses bad, watching Kim Caldwell go off on her team. You feel like the child that has been naughty and gets told off about how disappointed she is and how they did not compete. And Kim Caldwell was pissed at her team, basically saying from about the end of the second quarter, start of the third, they looked dead in the eyes and just didn't look like they wanted to compete. And so far, whenever she cracks the whip, Tennessee responds. But at some point, if you go to the whip too much, does it have an impact? That's what I'm curious to see. Will Tennessee make another run towards the end of the season or not? In terms of Tennessee's style of play, I still go back and forth on it. If I was a player for Tennessee, it would drive me mad, all the substitutions. I don't see how you get into a flow, but at the same time, I do like the idea. I put you out there, you're going to play to your full max as hard as you can go, and we're just going to be full on intensity against our teams. I do think Tennessee is better than they were last year, but it'll be curious to see how they go at the SEC tournament. It was a bit uncomfortable, at least for me. I couldn't help but feel for Kelly Harper having to do the halftime show, but I did think she did a good job. Now, sorry about this. I'm going to go back to the ACC because I probably should have mentioned the Duke-Florida State game, so that will be at Florida State. I'm calling that the flat tire game because I imagine both these teams, Duke with a big win over North Carolina and Florida State with their win over Notre Dame. I think both these teams are going to be super flat, but on paper it looks like a good game because Duke is a good defensive team where Florida State is a good offensive game. It's sort of like, the boxer versus the puncher. And then I'm not organized, so I will flip back to the SEC. I guess the one The other game I'm looking at is the get back on track game, which would be LSU versus Ole Miss. Both of those teams had tough losses. LSU, I'm more impressed with. If you take Alabama to overtime at their place, when Flau'jae Johnson goes for 2 for 12 for 6 points, I think that's pretty good. I don't think LSU's too worried about that loss, and I think they'll look to get back on track versus Ole Miss. I just don't trust Ole Miss when they're going against elite talent or elite teams. I think they're just a little bit off the pace. And yes, hate me, Ole Miss fans, if you like, but when you're making your run to the Final Four, I've got no doubt it's based on that comment alone that I've just reverse jinxed you to making the Final Four. Now, the last matchup you need to watch is in the Big 12. So TCU is at Baylor, and they are playing for the regular season championship. Much like Florida State versus Duke, this is a good puncher versus boxer matchup. TCU being the offensive juggernaut, averaging 118 points per 100 possessions, and Baylor 109 points. But obviously, Baylor plays better defense, giving up 89 points per 100 possession versus TCU that gives up 94 points per 100 possession. Now, I haven't watched either of these teams enough. My gut tells me to go with TCU, and that I feel like nachos for dinner tonight, but I don't know. Don't take that one to the bank, that's for sure. Now the final topic, Yukon. Yes, they got a victory over Creighton, 72-53. They are going to be the outright Big East champion. Congratulations to them. And everything is coming up roses for them seemingly, as they don't have any injuries, including Caroline Ducharme is now playing. In addition, if Notre Dame keeps on losing, they might be able to score a 1 seed, to be determined. Again, I really don't think it matters. But this was interesting from Geno in the postgame, asked about why Paige is bringing up the ball more and is that better for Yukon. He had a bit of a crack at her. Take a listen.
Yeah, we made a concerted effort to put the ball in her hands more often. I mean, actually, she kind of forced us to do it because she refused to run up the floor when she didn't get the outlet pass. So if we didn't put the ball in her hand, she wasn't going to run up there anyway. So we're like, what's the point? She wants the ball in her hand, and, you know, she's pouting over there. So let's give her the ball and let her do what she wants with it. And because she has it in her hands a lot more now, she has the ability to, you know, kind of dictate where the ball is going to go. And, you know, Caitlin and KK, they're fine. Just sprint up the floor. And so Paige is playing the way she wants to play. And it's actually better for us to play that way. So that's what those numbers reflect, really.
As well, if you're wondering, Paige is aware of this issue as she addressed it in the pregame.
Yeah, coach is always like, Paige doesn't run the floor, so we don't need to get her the outlet and everybody else run. But it's something we've been working on in practice, continue to try to push the pace.
Do I think much of this? Not really. My suspicion is he just wants to whack his team a little bit because they're riding high after their victory over South Carolina, and Paige Beckers is a good player to go after, as you know that she can take it. Much like how 2 years ago when Paige Beckers was out, Yukon had a bad loss at home, and they were struggling, and he just went after Nika Mule, saying that she was selfish. And much of that I thought was for show because he knew he could get after her and it wasn't going to be an issue, and just laying down the law. And oftentimes you go after your toughest player and doing that, the one that you can take it. I thought it was more telling. Some of the things that he said about Ice Brady early in the season, trying to pump her up, saying that she was doing the right things and really trying to build her. I actually like it better when Geno's able to whack players because he knows they can take it. I thought it was a good sign when he went after Jana El-Alfi. And sure enough, she had her best game versus South Carolina. And I just think he's giving a bit of a knockdown to Paige Beckers a bit, just to lock her in and just to keep everybody in line. That's my theory. If you're a Yukon fan and you have your own, lay it down. It's all speculation. All right, now over to you for your thoughts, your comments. All your poison is welcome. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a great night.